I was running a marketing company and I had a goal of being a millionaire by the time I was 30, and I was on track. Things were going well. I was successful. I had romance. I had friendship. I was a part of such levels of exploitation, of oppression, of extraction through everything. The food I was eating, the car I was driving, the trash I was creating, the stuff I was buying, the money I was spending them. So I just realized I'm not going to do that. But my ultimate goal, I'm living it right now, which is just to use my life of service, to take responsibility for my actions, and to know that my life is enriching the lives of others.
Welcome to a new episode of the Food Force podcast. And together we have the real honor to have Robin Greenfield with us. If you don't know Robin yet, he's an incredible guy, a beautiful activist who shared so much with the world. And he's done a lot of crazy adventures, ranging from foraging in the wild to doing large walks, and now like having no ownership of material stuff in the world anymore. It's incredibly inspiring, and I'm super happy to have him here. Robin, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Very good. It's nice to be here with you, my friend.
Well, it's super nice to have you here. Where are you? You have such a beautiful background.
Yeah, I'm actually in my homeland of northern Wisconsin. This is the land where I grew up and spent the first 19 years of my life. And after about 19 years of traveling and living in other places, I returned here this summer, and I'm exploring the possibility of putting down roots here for the long term.
And that's so incredible because you've been literally wandering around this planet. Do you feel now that it's time to get rooted again?
Well, I'm a very rooted person without having necessarily a physical place, because my home is here on earth, and my home is inside of myself as well. I've done a lot of work to build wholeness and completeness within, and so I don't necessarily need to be in a single physical spot to be rooted. However, there is a lot that can be gained from being in the changing of the seasons and experiencing the same place and watching the growth and the transformation around. And so I'm very interested and intrigued with the idea of setting down roots in a place long term. And of all the places, this may be the one that I feel the most drawn to. But we will see. I've been quite the traveler and quite the mover for 2 decades now, and that goes back even further than that.
Yeah, and is it so that you often hear that people have a kind of ecological identity, like a kind of ecosystem where they feel the most at home? Do you feel that this is maybe your ecological identity?
Oh yeah. So this summer I was collecting, or this fall I was collecting the glossy buckthorn berries, which are, a plant that's considered invasive here in northern Wisconsin. There's the common buckthorn and the glossy buckthorn, and I was collecting the glossy buckthorn actually to dye this sweater green, because that's what you can
Oh,
get, it green. And so I was in Prentice Park harvesting this glossy buckthorn, and in that moment, I realized just that I was Prentice Park. That was the place where I grew up. It's where one of the places I learned to fish. It was my early place of freedom. It's where I learned autonomy. It was up to a large degree where I became myself. And so I felt in that moment that I am Prentice Park. And
nice.
I can't say that about anywhere in San Diego or Florida or in the Appalachian Mountains. Here, I have such a deep relationship to the plants, to the animals, and of course, that means to myself, because myself is interconnected with everything here. So it's a beautifully and profound experience to be back here, and to be deepening my relationship with the earth through what's woven into my DNA.
Yeah, yeah. But that's so interesting that like where you grew up, that you really take it inside you, and like you traveled all these places, and now for some reason you're drawn back into it. I had the same, but it's only after 5 years. It didn't take so much. Yeah, no, really, I'm interested about that. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you see your own spiritual journey through all the crazy adventure, if I may
Mm.
call them that way, um, ranging from or starting with foraging, living without any waste, having your giant walks of gratitude, also your complete vow to total transparency and truth that you kind of made your mind Creative Commons. So
Yeah.
I'm probably allowed then to ask your deepest secrets. Can you tell me about this journey and how it, yeah, how it's how you see it, how you look back if you like have to sketch your timeline, and you can really take all the time you need to
Mm.
sketch this timeline.
Sure. Well, I will give the summarized version of that because it's definitely an hour. It takes an hour to give the full, and that's of course. But well, basically, in 2011, I was living a fairly typical U.S. American lifestyle. I was quite focused on material possessions and financial wealth. My car was very important to me. My clothes were very important to me. I was running a marketing company, and I had a goal of being a millionaire by the time I was 30, and I was on track.
All
And,
right.
things were going well. I was successful, I had romance, I had friendship, I was exploring the world. I was making all my childhood dreams come true as a young Wisconsin man living in San Diego, California by the beach, and
All right.
I could have just kept doing that for the rest of my life, and life would have been excellent. But then, well, something happened, and I realized that I wanted to totally transform my life, and what that was is I started to watch a lot of documentaries, I started to read books, I started to talk to different people, and I learned that the way that I was living was causing such destruction to the earth, to the people, to the plants and animals. I learned that I was a part of such levels of exploitation, of oppression, of extraction, through everything, the food I was eating, the car I was driving, the trash I was creating, the stuff I was buying, the money I was spending, the money I had invested. I was just wrapped into this web of consumerism, and this web of consumerism was, um, what we call the American dream, but I realized it's the world's nightmare. And so
Put
this
that
was
on a t-shirt.
Yeah, and so I just realized I'm not gonna do that anymore. I wanna live sustainably. I wanna live in harmony with this earth. I want to take responsibility for my actions, and I want to respect life upon this earth. And so I took that really seriously to transform my life through my actions, my thoughts, my words. And so some people definitely call it a spiritual journey because this is about truth. This is
Mhm.
deeply about truth when we realize corporations have lied to us, governments have lied to us, society has hid the truth behind closed doors. Truth is one of the deepest aspects of spirituality. And so I don't consider myself a very spiritual person, but it's very, it's in the spiritual realm to seek truth and to seek alignment and to seek harmony and to seek to be a friend of all.
Yeah. And what really made you decide to, what was your tipping point? Because you can like start, okay, now I'm gonna like don't eat meat anymore, and now I'm gonna like only use LED lights anymore. That's like the step, but you took a larger step. um what was the tipping point to take such an extreme action?
Well, so for me, it was just that I had now educated myself. I'm a very logical and rational person. I now knew that I was living a great hypocrisy, and I wasn't going to do that anymore. So what I did is step by step, I took my life back. I made a list of over 100 changes that I wanted to make, and I committed to making at least one positive change per week for 2 years because that's 100 positive changes. So imagine if you woke up and you were doing 100 things differently tomorrow. Your food is different, your hobbies might be different, your clothes might be different, your smell might be different, your friends will be different, your friends' smell might be different. Um, I just step by step, a lot of small changes, such as starting to ride my bike more and drive the car less, or starting to go to the bulk section of the food co-op and get my food unpackaged, starting to eat a lot, cook more food at home from whole ingredients, go to the local farmers market, get rid of all the toxic ingredients in my toxic chemicals in my house that I was putting for cleaning, but also on my body, taking my money out of my investments and so on. So just step by step. And what I did is I built the foundation of a more sustainable life. And that allowed me to continue taking bigger steps that at first seemed impossible. But now that I had built up that foundation and I found that everything is interconnected. As I broke one strand of that web of consumerism,
Mm.
other strands would start to fall away as I was creating new strands to build a web of harmony, a web of truth, a web of sustainability.
And you kept on living the same life, like having the same work during that transformation of this 100.
Well, yeah, at the time I was running a marketing company, but I was also learning about our economic system and how through every dollar we spend, we are generally tied to systems of oppression and exploitation of the people, of the animals, of the plants, and of the ecosystems. So my big goal from the beginning was also to demonetize my life, to
Okay.
instead of needing money to meet my needs, build skills and build relationships to meet my needs. And so I put a lot of practice into that. One of my early adventures was to fly to Mexico with no money, with just the clothes in my back and passport, and have to travel home, which I had to really practice how to live without money, how to meet my basic needs. And so I would put myself through all sorts of adventures that were designed to build these skills. And then, of course, at the same time, that were designed to bring others along on this journey so they would question the things I was questioning, like the monetary system, which was, the reality is the monetary system is at the absolute core of our destruction of life as we know it. And one of my early inspirations was Mark Boyle. He wrote a book called The Moneyless Man, and that book, The Moneyless Man, The Moneyless Manifesto, and then he also wrote a book, Drinking Molotov Cocktails with Gandhi, which is questioning what is nonviolence really. When you look at our systems, it turns out our everyday reaction is actually violence, even when we think we're living these nonviolent lives. So, yeah.
And by doing all these tiny little stuff in the beginning, did you already notice that, like, when you are changing, that it's like impossible for your surroundings not to change? For example, friends, family who like maybe felt threatened by you changing?
Well, yes, everything is interconnected. As one thing changes, other things change as well. Um, I mean, for example, my social life was changing because I decided I wasn't going to be going to the bar anymore. I was spending, say a couple $100 a month on alcohol at the bar. And imagine what I could do with that $2,000, $3,000 a year to be of service to the earth instead of poisoning myself. And so that, of course, meant a change of friends. I started to instead volunteer at the local community garden. I got involved with one of the local sustainability meetup groups. Instead of partying, a friend named Brian and I would go on sustainability field trips where we would go to like a vermiculture site to learn about vermiculture, or we would, be playing with black soldier fly larvae to see if we could grow our own protein source for tilapia in a aquaponics or yeah in a aquaponics system. So yeah, everything was changing around me as I was changing my individual actions.
Was it hard to let go of some people that couldn't co-evolve with you?
Yes, and that it is a reality is that I did let go of some friendships, some relationships, some that were very close to me. I've been someone who's been practicing impermanence for quite some time and non-attachment. And the way that I look at it is there are 8 billion human beings on this earth. That's the potential for 8 billion different friends. I don't need a whole if there's a relationship that's not serving me, not serving them, I don't need to hold on to that because the humanity is an expanse of friendship and colleagueship that exists out there.
That's a very solacing thought that there are 8 billion potential friends out there. That's really a good one. Are there friendships that like vanished because of your being different than you were before, but that like came back later on?
Oh, actually, interestingly enough, I just saw my friend Brian, who was one of my best friends in high school. We went fishing together this summer, and it was the first time I'd seen him in over 15 years. And he actually works for the pipeline company that I have actually been in resistance to. And it was amazing the connection we had. I heard things
Nice.
that I had never heard before, and he heard things from me that he had never heard before. And we had this very heartfelt, open conversation from our different perspectives. It was deeply, I would say, healing and educational, and it's so important for us to be able to not cancel people and not cut people out. And so that was a beautiful example. And I'm not someone who cancels and cuts people out per se, but I only have so much time in my day, and so it's hard to maintain most relationships, even if you are in alignment, just because I try to put as much of my time as possible into my service rather than just socializing. So a lot of my relationships have fallen away just like anybody else because it's a lot to maintain. Um, and I'm happy to, especially being living up here in northern Wisconsin. You don't know everybody's political beliefs or everybody's environmental beliefs. People up here have a connection to the earth that often helps bring us together. We live in a place where you have to be connected to the earth, and so I don't live in any kind of bubble,
Yeah.
or to really, and so that's very, very important and helpful, I think, in this polarized world we live in, to break down that polarization and see that every human being is an intricate, complex, multifaceted human. We don't fit into these boxes that the media tries to make us appear.
That's really nice, and I really love Wisconsin. I traveled from Sault Ste. Marie to all the way to Ashland, right through it. Really loved the Lake Superior to swim in. Where are you? In which
I-
region are you?
I'm in Ashland,
Oh, you're in Ashland. Okay, yeah.
Lake
Oh wow,
Superior.
yeah. Oh wow, so you're really close to the lake.
Yeah, I grew up on this lake. I grew up about 2 blocks from the lake, so Lake
Oh
Superior
man,
is
that's incredible.
yeah.
Can you still drive with your car on the ice?
People with cars do that. Yep, absolutely. There's still gonna be 3 feet of ice out there in a colder winter, but some winters it doesn't freeze over.
Okay, so some winters you can't cross it.
Yeah, we've had some pretty, like, I mean, you can see since my childhood, you can see us. The climate has changed substantially since my childhood here.
Oh, crazy. Yeah. Like you made yourself you gave yourself a lot of challenges. I often hear that people they want to do something for the climate, for the earth, for biodiversity, but they sometimes feeling it itchy because they're like sacrificing things. They often have the feeling that they're sacrificing things.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with that feeling?
So yes, the way that I mean, you could say that I've let a lot of things go, or that I've, as you said, sacrificed. But that's not how it works for me. What I do is I look at my life and I ask, am I living the life that I truly want? Are my actions in alignment with my beliefs? And when the answer is no, I look and I say, what's the extraneous? What is it that I'm doing that's not actually bringing me the deepest value? And what can I do that will bring me the deepest value? So I am a human being that's looking for meaning and purpose. I'm not letting go of meaning and purpose. I'm not letting go of belonging. I'm not letting go of love and connection. I'm letting go of the things that prevent the deepest level of that, and I'm making space. I'm making space so that I can fill it with what really fills me. And so in that way, I'm not even remotely selfless because everything, all of this benefits me. Life is wonderful. I'm so happy to be alive and so happy to be on this journey in service and in connection.
Yeah, because you probably wear the best possible clothes out there. You possibly like eat whole foods, which taste incredible. The connections you make with other people are probably super deep. So you might not have any or very few material possessions. You actually are very rich because you experience all these riches.
Yes, we have to re-question what is richness, and we have been so deeply programmed by this individualistic modern society, here in the United States and much of Western Europe, but it's penetrated all over the world. And so this is about freeing our minds and becoming masters of our own minds. Actually being in control of our own minds. That's one of the most powerful things that we can do. So for people that are struggling with that, that are in that state of eco anxiety and overwhelm and doom and gloom, I mean, what I recommend is don't focus on what overwhelms you and what you're not wanting to do, but instead think about what is it you're really excited about? Are you excited about transforming your yard into a food forest? Are you excited about learning to forage? Are you excited about cooking nourishing food for people that don't have access to nourishing food in your neighborhood? What is it that you're passionate about, and start there and focus on that. And and then the things that maybe are more challenging, hold off on those, and as your life transitions and you'll be more in that flow state, then you can get into those. Start with what you're excited about, and also start small. Remember to celebrate every positive change that you make and keep building on that momentum.
Yeah, I think that's probably very, very wise advice because, like, if you would say to any random person, well, give up your life right now, get your bamboo bike and start biking and just abandon everything. Like they often say that extreme actions create an extreme counter reaction. If
Yeah.
you do it more smoothly, then there is less resistance.
Yeah. I do see that. I do see people. I mean, I've been, so it's 2011 is when I started this journey, and so that's 14 years ago now. And I've seen a lot of people who moved towards a more sustainable life and then went back.
Yeah.
And so you have to know your limits. Know your limits, push your limits, test your limits, but not so much that it exhausts you and overwhelms you. So, I've been on a journey of sustainable living, but as I've continued to deepen this, I've realized that we're never going to live sustainably if we don't love ourselves. If
Yeah.
if we don't love ourselves, we're never going to be able to really take care of this earth. So
Yeah.
my belief is that we really need to find wholeness and completeness within. We need to like ourselves as who we are. And so a really important part of this journey is healing ourselves, healing our relationships. And healing our relationship with the earth is often, you know, I've been practicing this concept of universal love, and especially over the last few years. And I found that the more that I practice just truly loving myself, the more, oh my gosh, the more love I feel for the trees and the animals and even the bacteria and, the cockroaches, things that people could only hate that I can now look at.
Yeah.
And I think love is very important in this movement of healing our relationship with the earth.
Yeah, and the more you love yourself, the softer you are to yourself in one sense, the kinder you are. And if you're kinder to yourself, it's easier to be kinder for other people.
Yeah, which is important. We live in a very difficult time. And the other thing that I like to bring to people is that, quite simply, the weight of the world does not belong on any one of our shoulders. we were born into a very, very difficult time on this earth, but it is not our responsibility as any of us as individuals to save this world. And none of us can none of us individually can save this world. So we can let go of that weight, and instead we can have reasonable expectations of what we can do. And part of that involves taking responsibility for our own actions, doing what we can do. And then also part of that is becoming a part of community where collectively we are changing the way in which we are existing and relating. So letting go of this burden that the whole weight of the world lies on our shoulders, and instead just taking that responsibility for what we can take responsibility for.
Yeah, but that's a thing that I think I need reminded of a lot, and probably a lot of people as well. Like you just telling it already feels like, all right, thanks for reminding me. It's true. Of the world is on your shoulder. And once you feel that feeling, it's like, all right, I have breathing space again. So now I have the energy and maybe the space to then do what I'm good at. Let's go and design some landscapes, or let's go and do this. So that's like a super powerful reminder.
Yes, so my teacher and I practice nonviolent communication or compassionate communication, and my teacher, Steve Torma, said that in his opinion, the number one form of human suffering is the negativity bias, which is our tendency to focus on the negative.
Mm.
And the idea is that this goes back tens, hundreds, millions of years in our evolution. And what it is in the past, we had to watch out for what was going to kill us. Otherwise, we'd be dead. And so
Yeah.
we had to be constantly vigilant and watching. Now, we still hold that in our DNA, but we don't, most of us, we don't have to worry about those things. But it comes out in everything, in the way that we're just existing in the world. And our news is an example of that. If there's 30
Mhm.
stories in a news hour, like 28 will be negative, and we hold that deep in. So it's our job to reprogram the negativity bias by focusing on the positive. I mean, there is so much positive to focus on, and that helps to empower us. So less news and more educating ourselves by watching quality content on food forests, for example, documentaries that share solutions, solutionary activists. Yes, we need to educate ourselves on the problem, no question about that, but only as much as is needed to allow us to be a part of the solution. And so reprogramming our mind from the negativity bias is a really important thing for us to do in this movement.
Percent. And that brings me to the self-love that you just talked about. I think it takes a lot of self-love, and also really feeling rooted, like how we started this conversation, to share your deepest secrets with the world. Because you don't have to share them if you don't want to right now. And I'm not going to ask you either. But have you shared your deepest secrets with the world already?
Yeah, absolutely. So
So there are no secrets anymore.
correct. To give a little backstory and then to share the little bit of a secret that I do have since having no secrets. So, yeah, last summer I walked from Canada to Los Angeles. I had simplified my life down to everything that I owned fitting on this little push buggy that I was walking down the Pacific Coast Highway primarily with.
Was it easier than a rucksack, a push buggy?
I put my backpack onto a little baby stroller so that I didn't, because I was on a road, so it's much easier to push it than to hold
Okay.
it.
All right.
And then I could hold more food and then I could eat more sustainably and I could have my glass jars, which I love to have glass jars instead
Oh,
of
God.
plastic. So basically I had set out that when I arrived in Los Angeles, I was going to give away everything that I owned and enter into this experiment of non-ownership. I had already gotten rid of my last form of ID, my passport, and my birth certificate. I had already gotten rid of my driver's license and social security card, and so I didn't have. I had that was a big step a couple years prior. So when I was going to get to LA, I was going to give away literally everything and sit naked in Griffith Park. That was the physical aspect of ownership. But there's
Yeah.
this aspect, our
Mm,
mental aspect of ownership and
definitely.
non-attach in the practice of non-attachment. We can be attached to so much in our own minds. And so one of the experiments that I got very intrigued by is what would it be like to exist with nothing to hide, nothing to guard, to be a completely open mind. And as a servant, my objective
Wow.
is to use my life of service. As a servant, would it be beneficial to have no secrets? Would that actually help me to be the most effective leader and servant in the times that we live in? So as I was walking from Canada to LA, I did just that. It took a lot of, emotional strength and motivation and yeah. And so I had a lot of conversations, one-on-one conversations with people, and then what I also did is I did a 9-part video series where I shared all of it. Anything down to anything I was embarrassed about, anything that I thought to myself, I don't want people.
Shame, guilt.
Yeah, exactly. Anything I didn't want people to know. And so it's a 9-part series, which is about 6 hours long, and it really dives in. It's a deep practice of truth and transparency. Because what if all of our government leaders were transparent? What if our presidents were transparent? What if our corporations were transparent? It would solve so much
We would
overnight.
have a different world.
Different world with transparency. We would know the truth behind our actions. And so I arrived in LA having done that, gave away everything, and I sat in Griffith Park owning nothing and really to the best of my ability, not owning my own mind, having
Mm.
made my mind Creative Commons. And so that was the beginning of this year of 2025. And I spent 4 months owning nothing and having no secrets. Now, what secrets I have are one, I now have the passwords to the accounts that I log into. So I have that secret, my password. Uh,
That's maybe a good thing.
I can tell you there's Earth is in there, the word Earth, and some numbers, some exclamation points. So I'll give you an idea. But so passwords to my accounts, and then also there are people who have taken me to their foraging spots who have told me not to tell people those foraging,
That's also a very
which is
important secret.
it's a little tricky. I'm not holding them like as honestly deep secrets. So I'm more like telling people, don't tell me stuff you don't want me to know. Um,
Yeah.
so to I have, but really my mind is totally open. There's nothing there that I'm not sharing with the world. Now I also say I haven't shared all of my thoughts. For one reason that would take hundreds of hours to share all
Of
of my
course.
thoughts, and two, that's another element where few people are honest with their thoughts. And so I haven't dove into that one completely yet because I don't know if most people are ready to really that's one that I haven't fully gone to is to really be able to fully openly share the thoughts that pass in my mind and out of my mind.
Can you give me like an example of how that would look like?
Sure. Well, to give you an example, like for example, I have thought about having sex with many people that I do not want to have sex with.
Yeah.
Thoughts of sex come into my mind and they are there and then they pass through. Why is that? It's because I was born into a deeply sexualized society where I've seen millions probably of images of sex. I've watched, growing up, all these movies that programmed my mind to first think about sex when it
Yeah.
comes to most women. So, for example, I don't know if I've ever said these words out loud, but I have thought about having sex with old women who I have no desire to have sex with whatsoever, but the
Yeah.
thought comes in, the thought goes out.
Just
And
like programmed things that you automatically do without even thinking. It's just like happen you see a woman and then buff, there you have that
yep.
thought and then it goes out again. Yeah.
Here's another one, which as a humanitarian, for some people, this would crush their belief of me. But sometimes when I see old people, I think about pushing them over. I'm never going to do it. I have no desire to do it. Somehow that's an idea that's gotten into my mind. Maybe it was a movie. In movies, people push people a lot. There's so much
Yeah,
violence in movies. But so like if you want to have ammo to use against me, you hear that and you paint me to be a bad person. But the reality is every one of us, I am 100% confident, has
yeah,
all sorts of thoughts we would never want anybody to know. And so I'm talking about that why. It's healing when people realize, "Oh, you have these crazy thoughts too, and there's nothing wrong with me. This is just
yeah,
the human state of existence." We can let it go, we can heal, we can start to accept ourselves.
yeah. I once heard an amazing quote by a Western guy. I forgot his name, who went to study with the masters in Tibet, and he came back and he was enlightened after all these years of training and meditation. And there was a reporter and asked him, "Well, what's the difference between the enlightened version of you and you like how you were like when you were 20 years old?" And he said, "Well, there is no big difference. I have the same worries, I have the same fear, I have the same things I ponder on, but the biggest difference is I just don't hold on to them. They just pass and then they go away." And I felt that it's like so refreshing to hear this.
Yeah, that is refreshing because it shows that it's accessible.
Unavailable, yeah. Like what you just told by the crazy thought you have of pushing old people and other stuff. It's like it will stay in your mind forever. So just like don't get attached to it and say, well, it's
Yep.
normal. Just like go on with your life. Go and pick some more berries, you know.
Yep, the saying that I use is, "And so it is.
And
Whatever
so it is.
happens, and so it is." I've had the most blissful day, and I'm not going to get attached to it, and so it is. Tomorrow doesn't have to be just as good. I've had just a day where I've just been depressed and anxious, and so it is. Tomorrow will be another day. It's not going to be this day, and so it is. And just whatever it is. It's snowing, and I didn't want it to snow, and so it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. What was like the most difficult thing to share with the world? Because most people probably don't share because of fear, guilt, shame. Probably one of the biggest reasons they don't share some thoughts, because like what would people think if I would share this crazy fantasy or idea? How did you overcome those?
Well, yeah, and guilt and shame from what I've some of what I've picked up from listening to different teachers that I respect is that when we do exist in that place of guilt and shame, it often ends up it really it really cripples us inside from being able to have really healthy, nurturing relationships, and it often manifests in us doing the same things that we're trying not to do. Um, so for me, what was the hardest thing to share was my sexual past. So, I grew up in a highly sexualized society where it was the standard to objectify women, where it was like a man or a boy's job was to like, prove their worth through who they have sex with
Mhm,
to others. And it's this like numbers, like ranking women from 1 to 10 and how many people have you had sex with. And so I was playing that game for my teens and my early 20s into my late 20s and even I guess into my early 30s, although by then I was substantially more, I mean, it was really my mid 20s when I stopped, when I broke free to a large degree. But just that was very, very painful to address it myself, to just be honest with myself, and then to be open about it. And one of the reasons it's painful is because we don't have a lot of nuanced conversations in our
mhm,
society. We don't do a lot of critical thought. I take that back. We do have a lot of nuanced and critical thought, but the majority are not. And so the majority of people who hear those things, they're going to paint pictures of you
yeah,
as this bad person, or rather than seeing the context of who you are, where you grew up, what your history is and such. And so how I got to the point where I was able to really heal and really accept and be able to speak about it publicly was by having a lot of healing, nurturing conversations with individuals and small groups.
Yeah.
Especially for me, it was having a lot of conversations. I know men and women, like hearing about the deepest, most vulnerable stuff from fellow peers that had never shared things before, and sharing it with women and hearing their experiences and being able to share, like, here's the what, why I did that, and how I feel, and so being able to have those individual conversations was very healing and was what allowed me to continue on that path of being able to have the bigger conversation in a public way.
Because wouldn't you say that it's probably easier for you to make your mind open source and share your deepest secrets if you first like need to come to peace with all this stuff? That, for example, let's say somebody is really struggling with something right now in their mind, and like if they would share it with the world, they like haven't come to peace with it for themselves. Do you think people should wait to do that before?
Yeah, well, not that we don't have to be at full peace, but a certain level of peace. It's like we were talking about with the step-by-step changes in living a more harmonious life with the earth. We also need to make step-by-step changes, and one of those step-by-step changes is just being able to say something out loud to ourselves.
Yeah.
To be able to say, I am mourning over some of the ways that I treated women in the past. Just to
Yeah.
say that out loud is painful.
Yeah.
I still feel some pain saying those words. I wasn't even saying that for myself. I was just giving an example, but me saying that, I felt pain.
Yeah.
Um, and and so I'm obviously I'm still healing. We all are. We're all on a healing journey, whether we want to admit that or not.
Yeah.
So, to say something out loud to ourselves, and then if we have a close person in our lives, like maybe it's our partner, to be able to get to the point where we don't have secrets from our partner is a huge step. That's so healing to be able to really truly share with our partner or our children or our parents.
Yeah.
And so, step by step, if we're looking to get into a place of alignment and truth and transparency, that's step by step, and for most of us, that's gonna take multiple decades of work because it's taken multiple decades. We've been programmed for multiple decades, and really the reality is that for every year of programming during our youth, it takes more time than that to unprogram that in our adulthood. So this takes real time and energy.
Yeah. Definitely. I think the idea of pushing old people maybe comes from a movie you may have seen, Death Race, the movie where there's like a race with cars where the goal is to like kill as many people as possible.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh. They say that there's all these people who want us to believe that watching this violence doesn't do something to our mind, but it absolutely does. I also want to acknowledge I love how we've been talking for, I don't know, maybe close to an hour on the Food Forest podcast and the array of topics that we've gotten into that are interconnected with food forestry, but I'm sure a lot of people listening to this were not expecting this conversation when on a Food Forest podcast.
that's the goal. We like trick them in with food forests, but then we talk about much deeper stuff. But yeah, it doesn't happen often to have somebody who's done what you've done. I've literally never met anybody who's done what you've done, and there are probably not as many around. So it would be a missed opportunity not to go deep in that.
Yeah.
But I was definitely planning to go to ask you the question, like, how big is foraging? Has foraging been a part of your journey?
Yeah. So, foraging. So when I first woke up, I definitely became intrigued by this idea that, wait, so you're telling me that there's all sorts of food and medicine that's growing right here outside of my house that I don't even have to grow, that's, growing through the cracks in the sidewalk and backyards and front yards, the weeds in the garden. you're telling me that there's just some of the most nutritious and delicious foods growing and that there's very powerful medicines and it's all just there? And that a lot of it is the stuff that we're destroying, that we're fighting a battle against, and instead I could actually harvest that and it's free. There's no money, there's no financial transaction. So I became intrigued by that early on in my journey. But it's not something I jumped into. There's definitely some level of intimidation around it, and it takes some level of skill, I would say, compared to just going to the grocery store and buying organic food instead.
Yeah,
Um, takes a little bit more, takes
courage
a little more, yeah, courage and energy, I would say.
and
And
definitely energy.
so it wasn't my initial, but I started foraging a little bit. Early on, I started to forage a little nasturtium and lamb's quarter. I was in San Diego, so citrus and guava,
Mm.
some common plants like that. And then in 2017, so 6 years out into my journey, the other thing that prevented me from foraging is I was doing a lot of dumpster diving to raise awareness about food waste. And so there were long stints where 100% of my food came from grocery store dumpsters, and I could eat. I could eat like an absolute king, just organic, whole foods from
Ah,
there.
lovely.
And so that also prevented me from doing much foraging. But in
Yeah, it's
2000,
another type of foraging, eh? Dumpster diving. It's like
yeah,
the more advanced version, like it's already been cooked, you know?
yeah, some people call that urban foraging. But for me, foraging is harvesting the plants that are just growing straight from the earth, not coming out of a dumpster. And so in 2017, I decided that I was going to set out on 1 year of growing and foraging 100% of my food. So a year without grocery stores or restaurants, only what I could grow in my gardens or forage. And I didn't have much experience at that time. I had my permaculture design certificate. I had planted food and trees across the country, but rarely did I ever be there from seed or cutting to harvest as a
Mm.
traveler. So now I settled in Orlando, Florida. I turned front yards into gardens other people's front yards, and I um, shared that space with them. And I gave myself 6 months to prepare, and I also started community fruit trees, seeds for the people, gardens for the people, community compost programs during that time. And 6 months, I needed a little longer. It took 10 months. But after 10 months, I went from 0% of my food to 100% of my food coming from what I was growing in those gardens, and much of it in a food foresty style way, and that I was foraging from, I'm going to use the word nature with quotations around it because
Yeah.
everything is nature. And so that year was a beautiful, beautiful year. There was definitely some real struggles. I'm talking about my salt, my oil, my fat, my protein, my calories, my vitamins, my minerals, everything that I ate, everything that I ate, and all of my medicine that I took internally for the entire year. But I finished the year having grown 100 different species of foods in my garden and foraged 200 different species of food from nature. And I really saw, wow, look, I can exist outside of the global industrial food system. I can produce and harvest my food in a harmonious way with Earth. And I mean, a big, big realization and experience for me.
And
And
empowerment probably too, right? That you must feel really empowered by like, look, it's possible.
very empowered. In fact, I remember at the end of the year, I was standing in my front yard garden 23 months after I had started, and I realized that I was standing about close to a foot taller than the sidewalk. And what I realized, that was like a foot of sequestered carbon and biomass. And so I
Okay.
realized not only did I grow and forage all of my food, but that the places where I grew the food are actually thriving more, not less, that they're more abundant, that this was an ecosystem service through
Yeah.
practicing permaculture and food forestry and just basic organic principles. And so it was very powerful. And the other powerful part after that is that I finished that in 2019. And since then, I anywhere that I go, I can find high quality food and medicine, ranging from snacks and teas to full meals. And that's pretty incredible that instead of seeing billboards for McDonald's on the interstate, I see an abundance of food and I stop and harvest it all.
Yeah, those billboards are hidden, so they're like more secretive. You know, you really have to know where those billboards are. Like here, you have free food just growing there, waiting for you. How did it felt in your body and in your mind? Like after, like the first weeks, did you have like some side effects, and then
Oh, yeah.
after a couple of months, did you like get used to the new normal? And then after a year, how did that feel?
Yeah, well, you got to imagine, letting go of the Ben and Jerry's ice cream and, all those sweets that I was used to and all the comfort and convenience foods. So it was challenging mentally. I was mentally reaching for a lot of things because I've used food as a way to fill the hole inside of myself. It's like, all right, I need something, eat something. I'm looking for some instant gratification, eat something.
Mm.
So that was challenging at first, but one of the beautiful things was I had always felt like sort of minor pain, inflammation in my stomach, or I had a lot over the previous years, and it only took a week of doing that I was like, whoa, that's gone after
Oh
years.
God.
And so I instantly, pretty quickly, felt a lot better in many ways. But it was a challenging year. Now, moving forward a little bit, in 2022, I embarked on a month of foraging 100% of my food. So no gardens, just nature being my garden. And that month was challenging as well, but went beautifully. And right now, I am on about day 33 of a year of foraging all of my food.
Oh,
So
really?
now, yes, yes.
Ooh,
So
you're right in that year of foraging, and
yeah,
so you're preparing yourself for winter. You're like harvesting a lot of acorns and chestnuts, or how is that going?
yeah. So I started on October 8th, 7th, 9th. I don't remember the exact day. I have it written down. And today's November 11th, so I'm just a little over a month into the year. I started preparation on July 1st, so I gave myself just 3 months of harvesting. Anything I'm eating, I didn't harvest prior to July 1st. And so I had the late summer, early fall as my preparation time. And now I'll go until 1 year, October 2026. And so I spent a good amount of time harvesting and processing and preserving food prior, but I it was definitely by far not the only thing that I was doing. So it was just a fraction of my time. I did store away a lot of food. I have a chest freezer that's full. I have a pantry that has a lot of food. I need to do some inventory, but probably 100 different species of plants and
Really?
mushrooms as far as my foods and medicines. And right now I have about some foods I have a year supply, some
Right.
foods I have a couple months supply, and I don't need to forage anything for the next couple months, and I'd have enough food. But I do need to do some more fishing, and I need to get another a deer. Um,
All right.
and so, yes, this is an exciting year of foraging all of my food and medicine.
Yeah. So the only thing you need is a deer, and you're gonna hunt it.
So I harvest a lot of times I harvest deer that are hit by cars
Okay. Yeah.
because it's such an abundant resource.
Of course.
20,000 deer are killed by cars per year in the state of
Mm.
Wisconsin alone.
Oh, that's
And
a lot.
actually,
Roadkill hunter.
yes, I am intending to hunt a deer. However, if I continuously have that abundance, I have less need to do that.
Yeah.
And then I'm fishing salmon and whitefish, and this spring I'll harvest suckers and smelt. So I have quite a bit of food stored. However, I'm also during this year not just staying in northern Wisconsin. Northern Wisconsin is my base,
Mhm.
and so my diet is based around northern Wisconsin. But I am traveling, and I'll be in Florida for January and February. And so
Okay,
I'll be
that's easier to forage.
yes, it's easier to forage. However, although it's easier, it's also harder the amount of traveling that I'm doing because
Yeah.
preservation and processing on the road. So
How are you
I
getting there
I'll get
from
into a
Wisconsin
car.
to Florida? To
I'll
car,
get into
yeah.
a car, most likely. It's possible I'll end up taking a train, but most likely a car.
But you won't be driving because you don't have a driver license anymore.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah. So yes, this year is a deep exploration in
Oh,
the food and
interesting.
medicine that's growing all around us. It's interesting. I do visit a lot of food forests. On my last tour on the East Coast, I visited the Boston Food Forest, one of their
Oh,
food forests, and I it's interesting being in food forests because it's like there's no clear line between growing and foraging in a lot of these
yeah.
food forests.
It's like like men used to be hunter gatherers. Right now, it's not always easy to do it. Like especially in the United States, I've tried it, and then you see a sign: "We don't call 911." Or if you read this, you're in range. Then you're like, "Okay, I better not forage here." So like a food forest is like the safe spot where you create like a foraging haven.
Yes, it's interesting, and so I have to figure out exactly. I have a lot of friends with food forests. I've spent a lot of my time in Florida, and food forestry is definitely very big there.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm not eating from food forests because I it would
But
just make life too easy,
yeah,
and it would no longer be the foraging experience.
that's
But
cheating.
there are some things I will eat from food forests, more like the weeds that are
Yeah,
growing in the food forest. And so,
the
of course,
non-intentional plans.
yeah, more of the non-intentional, but of course, like once we really start to look at things like I harvest wild rice, that's one of my staple foods.
Hmm.
But Anishinaabe people have been in relationship with the wild rice for at least 700 years. They've been tending the wild rice beds. They've been stewarding the wild rice beds. And so it's absolutely foraging, but it's not independent of human hands. And
Yeah,
when you really start to look at it, like any chestnut in the United States has had a relationship with humans.
yeah.
And so it's a beautiful dissolving of this illusion of separateness um and so I'm really excited for this year because one of my goals and aspirations is to fully belong here on earth, to not feel separate, to not feel like I don't belong like so many people do. They're taught to go to nature and leave no
Yeah.
trace. My job is to go to nature and to learn how to be in relationship with the plants in a way that's beneficial to what we call nature.
Yeah.
And so it's a very exciting year, and I'm traveling all over the country teaching foraging,
Oh,
doing
cool.
foraging activism. I'll be doing a speaking tour in Wisconsin, my homeland, in December, then
Yeah.
Florida and southern United States in January, February, and then I'll be out on the West Coast in May, June, and then again on the East Coast next year. So for people that are in the United States who want to come out and learn and be a part of it, I'll be able to be there in person with many of you.
That's so nice, and it's so nice that you really take the time to connect with people. That's I really so appreciate that, and that's something that yeah, a lot of people who are in the space just don't have time to share. And I'm even looking to myself. I don't have time. I have so much things to do. It's like, yeah, where do you find the time? And it's so nice that you're creating that time. And even though you're like having all your food scanned and processed and done whatever with it, to then think, okay, I have to do this speaking tour, but I do have to have all my stash with me. You know?
Yep. It's
So
challenging. It's very challenging, but it's so worth it. My objective is to embody a deep love and relationship with the earth and bring that with me wherever I go, into New York City and Washington, D.C., and into small towns like Blanchardville and Wanawak, Wisconsin, to just exist in such a deep state of love and connection with the earth that people can feel it and they can't help but to start to embody it themselves. That's my ultimate aspiration, is to just exist in a state of such love that others start to feel that love, and that love for the plants, that love for the animals, that love for one another as humans, but also that love for the bacteria and yeast. And one thing that I love to talk about is the fact that we now know that as an individual human, what are we? We are an interconnected culture of species of bacteria, yeast, microviruses, and that when you remove those, if you were theoretically to remove all of those from the
We
individual,
die.
we die. So then it's like, well, then what are we? What is a human? Each human is an ecosystem. And so, like, we are nature.
Yeah.
And we aren't separate. We're interconnected. And that's ultimately what I want to spend a lot of my time talking about, is just the fact that we are interconnected with everything.
Cool.
And when we dump poisons onto the earth or onto our body, that goes somewhere. There is no way to start to see what Carl Sagan calls the pale blue dot. This planet Earth as this
Oh
one
yeah.
little,
Yeah.
yeah, this one little globe that we have, and that we're all in this together as a humanity.
Yeah. I'm super happy that you bring that up because that's, I think, one of the most important things, that once you know that we have more non-human cells in our body than human cells, it's an entire paradigm change.
Yes.
If you look at the future, Robin, are you somebody that like has this bucket list of, all right, now I did 1 year of foraging, next year I want to do like 1 year of this, or did you have like this crazy challenges for you laid out in the future, or like an ultimate goal you were striving for, or is it more organically that you say, well, I'm gonna feel what I want to do, like?
Yeah. Well, so yes, my life has been that, a list of many of these activism campaigns, these immersive experiences, these endeavors. And I have been, sometimes these are ideas that I've had for many years and it's finally time for them. Other times they're more of a newer arrival. But that's what I have done. But when I did the experiment of non-ownership, I actually deleted almost I got rid of everything that I had on my computer, and I got rid of the computer. And anything that I had that I was keeping, I published it
Mm.
online. It's publicly available. So I also deleted most of my lists of aspirations and goals. And so right now,
That's a good one.
I don't have any thing in mind after this year of foraging as far as upcoming endeavors.
Yeah.
I haven't been thinking about that, which I'm thinking that now, like, wow, that's great. I'm present in this
Yeah.
project. But my
Maybe the
ultimate,
biggest challenge of all, being present all
well,
the
yeah,
time.
that is. But my ultimate goal, I'm living it right now, which is just to use my life of service, to take responsibility for my actions, and to know that my life is enriching the lives of others. And so, more or less, I want to keep doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life, to stand up against these systems of destruction in a solutionary way. And I'm only at a fraction of where I would like to get to. There's still a lot of work that I'd like to do to bring my actions in alignment with my beliefs and to live in harmony. It's a long process of doing that. So I still have a lot of work to do and a lot of work on my own mind, to be the best servant that I can. But my ultimate goal, one of them, is to use every ounce of my being to be of service to the earth, which I looked at your website and I know you can very much resonate with that.
Definitely.
Um, to be of service to the earth and to the people and to all life that we share this home with. And I still have a lot of work to do in
Yeah.
that regard.
I'm wondering, like, something that I personally struggle with, and I'm super curious, like, how you deal with that. Like, you can always do more. You can get coaching to become better. You can go to teachers to become better. You can always do more. But there is also like a fine line between self-care, and like not burning yourself up to do all this kind of crazy stuff, and being of service. How do you draw the line or find a balance between, like, okay, there's like an unlimited potential to make as much impact as possible, um, but you're not doing it right now? Like, how do you find a balance between that?
Well, I think one of the big parts about it is it's about really deeply asking, what is our motivation? Like, what's our true motivation? So it's easy to frame it as we want to be of service. We want to help our ailing world. But how much of it is actually a place of ego and a place of drive for success that we have taken from the dominator way of, like, get mine at the expense of others? We've transformed it to, we want to be of service, and we want to use our lives for good. But is it still from a place of ego and desire to be loved, desire to be perceived in a certain way? And I know for me, there's more of that than I would like. So I have to ask myself, is what I'm doing enough? And is the reason that it's not enough because of my own desire to be perceived well, and not just perceived well, but to be really highly regarded in society? And
Yeah.
so I would say asking those deep questions is really important. How much is it that we're being driven by ego? And unfortunately, right now, when I'm deciding what I'm going to do, I'm often thinking, I want people to know, um, I I'm often thinking that I want to be successful,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be operating from that way, and that
You want to be
takes.
an impact millionaire before you're 40, an impact billionaire before you're 40, which is
So
like the
so the
same
good.
thing. Like you wanting to
Yeah,
be millionaire before you're 30. It's like, okay, now I want to be
yeah.
impact billionaire before I'm 40.
And so the key is, if we wanna be able to exist in that more harmonious state, we have to work on our egos and dissolve more of that. Because when we do that, we'll experience less of the overwhelm and anxiety. Instead, we can, if we're really truly operating from a place of service, and we know that we're enriching the lives of others, and we aren't so focused on our personal success and drive, then I believe that we'll actually be much more content, we'll be suffering less, and we'll actually be able to celebrate what we're doing rather than be so driven. Now, I'm not. I also think that for people like you and I, it is important that we use this drive for success to be of service, but we can't delude ourselves, and we have to figure that out, come into balance, really critically think and self-analyze. And one reason that's so important as activists, and there's a lot of philanthropists out there, if we are deep down really being driven by our own interior motives, then often we end up doing more harm than we do good, or we end up doing harm in areas where we could be doing good, because really we want we're looking to meet those needs of our own belonging and love. And so I've let go of a good amount of that, and so I'm able to just look at it and say, yes, I'm being of service, and I don't have to be nearly as successful as I believed that I once could be, and that's fine.
That's interesting because like I'm 100% sure that, for example, a big reason why I'm doing the things I'm doing is because like you say, I want to be accepted by humanity. I want to have probably a high regard from society that say, oh my God, this guy is doing really impactful things. He must be a cool guy. Have you yearn to be loved, all stuff
Yeah,
like that. But so when you let go of that, and it also relieves the pressure, and it's like, okay, like it's okay that I'm now going to watch a movie or going to read a book and just relax because I am already doing some impact, and you like not pushing yourself too hard. And then it probably, because of this, you'll get more space, more energy. And at the end, you'll create more impact, but maybe not in a couple of 3 hours when you're going to watch two movies or three
yeah,
episodes. But then you probably like be recharged and do 5 times the impact in 1 hour than you would have done like if you just like pushed yourself to do 5 hours of impact
yeah.
time. Is it like
Yeah,
that?
and there's no easy answer, because so the way that I look at it is, the ideal scenario is that we shed all elements of the ego that are not serving the public good, and we hold on to and we hone in all elements of the ego that are serving the public good. And then eventually, if we were to be, you know, fully enlightened, we would let go of all elements of the ego and
Mm.
becoming only from that place of love and service. But almost no human being that we ever meet is going to accomplish
Yeah.
that. But the ideal scenario that we can get to is that we shed the elements of the ego that are individualistic and are serving ourselves at the expense of others. We hold on to the elements of the ego that are beneficial. And I would say, I would imagine both you and I are operating from a place where we're still operating from a place of ego, but mostly we're not going to let that ego take advantage of and exploit others. We're only going to uh, use that ego in a way that is generally of service at the same time. But the tricky thing, of course, is that people say, well, if I dissolve the ego, will I just sit around and will I
Exactly.
not?
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's the real work. That's the deep practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we dissolve the ego, we build the love. We build the
Yeah.
skills of service.
Mhm.
Service is a skill. It takes honing in that skill to build. So we have to be building that skill, building those systems of service. And as we do that and service becomes our norm, I think we can get to the place where we use our entire life of service and ego is the minor aspect rather than the driving factor that it is for so
Yeah.
many of us, including myself. Still, it is a very driving factor.
Yeah. And I think it's good that you mentioned this because, like, sometimes you would have the proclivity to fight against that ego. But if you treat it like the law of the invisible hand, that it's like, or it's okay, it's helping you, it's propelling you forwards until you are enlightened, use it for good, then like not fighting it helps you forward.
Yeah, use it for good. And so, one other thing that I want to mention that I'm really excited and that I really want people who listen to this podcast to get involved in is this year I launched the 1 million community fruit trees initiative. And so over the next decade, we are planting 1 million fruit and nut trees in a very grassroots collaborative manner. And we're doing this through building little micro nurseries that are 4x8 air pruning beds, and then also basic buckets. And in a 4x8 raised bed, we can plant about 1,000 trees from seed or cutting. And in a simple 5-gallon bucket, we can plant 30 to 50-ish trees.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to get people who want to grow trees to then spread them to people in their community to to have all this wonderful food and medicine growing freely and abundantly all around us. And so I I really, although we've dived into such wonderful topics and fully engaged in that, I couldn't not talk a little bit about community fruit trees because I know a lot of people out there would be quite excited to get involved.
Definitely. So how can people get involved? Is it on your website, Community Fruit
Yeah.
Trees?
Yep.
Yeah, all right.
Yep.
You can put it in the
RobinGreenfield.org.
show notes.
RobinGreenfield.org/community fruit trees. And there you can actually sign up to become a steward who's going to be growing the trees, or sign up to be a recipient of the trees if you're wanting to plant them in your communities. And we will be shipping trees to people. Um, but what we want to do is have micro nurseries spread out regionally where people can be picking up the trees primarily. And so this year we're planting 20,000 trees, and then in the next year it'll be 50,000 trees, and then the next year 100,000 trees.
It's
and
incredible.
and then what we're doing is 1 year trees, so we only grow the trees for 1 year, and then we plant them as small yearlings.
Yeah,
And this allows us to be able to, whereas in the past we were buying our trees for $20 a piece, $40 a piece for potted trees. Through this, that would have cost 20 million, $40 million just for the trees. But by growing the trees ourselves through this grassroots, decentralized way, it
yeah.
doesn't cost much money at all because we're harvesting the cuttings and seeds uh, from what's growing around us already. And so I'm really excited about this, and I think maybe after the program is really running, and then maybe we could do another podcast and really dive into community fruit trees.
Definitely. Yeah, because like we have a lot of things to talk about, and like one podcast is way too short, so that's a very good initiative you're taking. Let's take a note and plan that in. Looking forward to hear all the experience you're gonna have with that. And
Yeah.
like and like, yeah, dear listener, please go and get involved and start your nursery as well. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether you're in the desert or in a tropical climate, subtropics, or high up north in the and more temperate climate, or high up south as well. And get involved, because there's like nothing more magical than planting a seed of an apple tree, having an apple tree growing, then grafting it later on. It's
Mhm.
like you co-created this. You are a god once you're doing this. So yeah, it was super exciting to have you on the podcast, Robin. I'm gonna respect your time because we already went a little bit over our time, because you are too interesting. I'm sorry. Uh, um, but before we wrap up, like one last question: if you would be given a magic wand, you could do literally anything with that wand, what would you do with it?
Huh. Phew, wow. I mean, that's such a hypothetical question that it would
You never know.
there's so many answers, and so I don't have the answer to that question right now because I would really have to think about the repercussions of any of those potential actions. Um,
Just your gut reaction. Like, what's the first thing that popped into your mind, even if it like has crazy consequences? It's like, because you have to share your deepest thoughts. It's in your terms
yeah,
of
so I think
agreement.
that I'm gonna have to think about that, and you're gonna have to ask me that again on the next podcast.
Okay.
So, two notes that I want to share is for people that are interested in this year of foraging, that's at robingreenfield.org/foraging year. And that's where my events are listed. And, that's where everything you'll want to know about that year, you'll be able to find there. Also, my book, Food Freedom, A Year of Growing and Foraging All My Food and Medicine, is an empowerment manual for liberation through food. Anybody that's interested in food forestry, I think we'll get a lot out of this book. It's the story of my year of growing and foraging all my food. It's a critique of the global industrial food system, and it's an empowerment manual to help people with whatever foraging, growing, permaculture, shopping low waste, getting involved in community. It's a really helpful resource. It's available on a donation basis, so it's very accessible to anybody who would like it. Money is not a barrier. I really would love to share that book with people. That's at robingreenfield.org/food freedom. And I post pretty consistently on social media, so I welcome people to join me there. And now I'm really excited. I've got some wild rice cooking up downstairs, and I'm excited
Ooh,
to dive into a pot of hot wild rice.
I'm getting hungry hearing that. It's been really a pleasure meeting you, Robin, and like all the links that Robin just shared, and you maybe didn't write it down. It's going to be in the show notes on foodforestpodcast.com, where you can read all the links to his books, all his campaigns, also his previous crazy adventures, and of course also where you can see the other episodes we already had, the courses we give, the design work we're doing. So happy to see you there, and definitely welcome to the next episode.
All right, my friend. Really good to connect.